All right, so I believe that brings us to the end of the introductions. Thank you, everybody, for telling us about yourself. If you can, go ahead and please make sure your microphone is on mute. So what we are doing here tonight is we are having the Introduction to Ski Patrol course. And what is this Introduction to Ski Patrol course? So basically, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are unable to hold our outdoor emergency care class that we hold every year around this time. In addition, the National Ski Patrol has not allowed us to hold in-person classes due to the pandemic. So we thought, what can we do to kind of, make sure that we retain our candidates? And we came up with this idea of doing an introduction to ski patrol. So pretty much what's going to happen is that we're going to present the material as though we are doing a live OEC class. We're going to use the same slides, the same lecture material that we would use in a typical outdoor emergency care class, but we've retitled everything to Introduction to Ski Patrol. At the conclusion of the program, we do have 5 scheduled days of in-class participation, which hopefully we can get to once the pandemic comes to an end in 2021. When you have completed both these online modules that we have created, and you have completed the 5 outdoor or the 5 skills days, then we are planning on having a challenge test where you will be able to challenge the outdoor emergency care written and practical examination, at which point in time you'll be considered a certified outdoor emergency care patroller, and you can then come on board the ski patrol as a full-fledged patroller. After you become a full-fledged patroller, there is additional training you must complete. We do have some on-the-hill training, and we do have some toboggan handling skills that we must go over in order for you to keep your status on the patrol. Patty, was I missing anything in that overview of what we have created?
I think so. You did pretty good at that.
Awesome. So before we take off into the material, I just really would like to go over a few rules that we have outlined for this online program. If at any time you do have any questions, you are able to use the raise your hand feature. If you click on your name and I believe go down to more, you can go ahead and raise your hand. If you do run into any issues with that, feel free to unmute yourself and stop me at any time. However, please make sure that while the presenter is presenting the material, that your computer is muted to prevent additional background noise from occurring and so that everybody can hear the presenter. Also too, please note that we are recording each session. We are recording so that way you are able to go back and review the material on your own time. Or if you do miss a session, our intention is that you can go back and review the material at when you're able to. As the program continues, as the pandemic goes on, we want you guys to be able to study and make sure that you are patrollers that are capable and competent of being on the Lee Canyon Ski Patrol. So with that, let's go ahead and let's jump into the introduction to outdoor emergency care, unless anybody else has any other comments or anything they'd like to add. Seeing that nobody has anything else to add, let me go ahead and load up my screen here, and we'll go ahead and continue with the presentation of the program. Give me 1 second to get screen sharing set up. Please ignore the fact that you're looking down. I've got multiple screens and multiple computers, so I'm just making sure I get the right thing for screen sharing. Okay, so everybody should see my screen. You should also be hearing my dogs bark in the background as somebody's walking through my door. But everybody should be seeing my screen at this time. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right, I'm seeing some head shakes, some nods, some thumbs up. Amazing. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start off with chapter 1 of the outdoor emergency care class. Let me go ahead and actually swap the screens here. Sure. Okay, there we go. That's what we want. All right. So everybody should see the full screen introduction to outdoor emergency care. So we are currently utilizing the OEC Outdoor Emergency Care 6th edition. This is a new edition for us as the National Ski Patrol has recently released this 6th edition. So during these presentations, you will see two symbols that will pop up. If you do notice during the material, a white cross with an orange circle, this means that the slide is meeting our chapter objective. And you will also notice that there is a key term symbol, and that is a text that is red and double underlined, and that means that we have identified a key term that is important for you to know through this program. So our objectives during this chapter 1 is 1, we are going to describe the evolution and purpose of the National Ski Patrol's OEC program. 2, we want to identify the founder of the National Ski Patrol. 3, we want to describe the OEC certification and recertification process. 4, we want to describe the impact of Good Samaritan laws on rescue volunteers. 5, we want to contrast standard of training and standard of care. 6, we have some terms that we are going to define. And 7, we have some concepts, including informed consent, express consent, implied consent, and minor consent. So once again, these are some key terms that we are going to identify. I'm not going to read them aloud right now, as we will go ahead and cover them during the chapter. Once again, some additional key terms. So to go over chapter 1. So for over 80 years, the National Ski Patrol has trained people who have successfully cared for thousands of injured snow sports enthusiasts. And us at Lee Canyon, we do care for, on average, several hundred snow sport enthusiasts each year, ranging from everything from minor medical altitude illness all the way up to major traumatic injuries. We've also had over the years people who have gone into cardiac arrest, and we must really, as patrollers, be prepared for anything that can happen. Now, National Ski Patrol has a presence at a variety of 4-season outdoor activities available at ski areas, bike parks, and other land management areas. This is important because as we progress our resort, we are going to be moving into some year-round operations. Currently, our resort is a year-round resort. We do have skiing and snowboarding in the winter, but then in the summer, we have Frisbee golf, we have chair rides, and they also have the bar and grill open. In the future, in the coming years, there are plans to make this into a bike park. So there is mountain biking that is slated to come to our resort in the coming years, which means that the patrol is going to have to step up our activities at the resort to now provide year-round coverage when that time comes. And then today's patroller level of training is that of the National Highway Safety and Traffic Administration Emergency Medical Responder. So the course that we are getting ready to go over is going to be equal to that of an emergency medical responder. And so very similar training. However, the focus of National Ski Patrol's outdoor emergency care class is to train individuals to respond specifically to a outdoor wilderness environment compared to the NHTSA EMR training, which is geared more towards working in an urban environment. So in the mid-1980s, this program was created by Dr. Warren Bowman. He developed the first medical text used exclusively by ski patrollers, and this was known as winter emergency care. Today, we now have the outdoor emergency care curriculum, which is designed to teach patrollers how to function with minimal equipment in any environment while assessing and caring for the sick and the injured. And really, this is a, what we are working under is a niche area of pre-hospital care. We work in an area where not many individuals would want to come out to due to the environment that we work in. People sometimes, when I tell them that I'm a ski patroller and I work outdoors in sub-zero temperatures, they look at me like I'm crazy. So going over the National Ski Patrol and history and evolution of ski patrol. So the founder of the National Ski Patrol is Charles Minnie Dole, who experienced the need for emergency care and rescue services during a personal skiing mishap at Stowe, Vermont. He took a serious fall, resulting in a nasty angulated fracture. 2 months later, the fatal accident of Minnie's friend, Frank Edson, planted the seed for what would soon become the National Ski Patrol. In 1938, the National Ski Association asked Dole to organize the setup of patrols on a national basis, and this marked the birth of National Ski Patrol System, Inc., or what we refer to as NSP. In 1939, the first text developed was in affiliation with the American Red Cross. This was called the Ski and Safety and First Aid by American Red Cross, and this was written by the American Red Cross advisor, L.M. Thompson, who was also NSP's first national medical advisor. Around the same time, during World War II, Minnie Dole convinced the Army the value of winter warfare troops, and the 10th Mountain Division was born. Many of the 10th Mountain Division veterans returned home to become leaders in the growing ski industry following the war's end in 1945. In 1980, Congress granted the NSP with a federal charter. This meant patrollers required additional pre-hospital medical care training for patients during cold weather and at high altitude. By 1985, Dr. Warren Bowman created an emergency responder textbook exclusively for ski patrollers called the Winter Emergency Care. And 3 years later, this text was revised and called the Outdoor Emergency Care, as patrollers were involved in other activities, not just related to ski patrol during the winter months. Here's a photo of Dr. Warren Bowman, in case you were wondering who I'm talking about. And NSP has evolved over the last 80 years. Pre-hospital care is ever changing, and so is our curriculum to meet the needs of patrollers and outdoor emergency care individuals. The primary curricula taught to ski and bicycle patrollers is OEC. However, you can also take this course if you're going to do any kind of outdoor emergency care, as this curriculum is also used by other pre-hospital medical providers. Personally, I know several guides that take the OEC or outdoor emergency care class, and they use this for their guiding medical knowledge. So, like I said, the 6th edition was recently released. I believe it was released in either 2019 or 2020. So this is a brand new curriculum for us. So I apologize for anything that should come up in case we're not very familiar with it. However, the curriculum overall hasn't changed a whole lot. They added a few things that we will be sure to go over during the class. This new edition, one of the big differences is that they really focused the 6th edition on evidence-based medicine. You know, one of the things that really has happened in medicine in the last several years is this idea of going towards evidence-based medicine. Many years ago, what happened was people thought things would work, and we kind of went with it, and we kind of ran with what people said would work. And then we realized that, you know, these things didn't quite work out the way we thought. So we are progressing towards, you know, having evidence to show why we do things. And the entire curriculum has been under review to make sure that we are using the best science and the best knowledge necessary to achieve the care that we provide to our guests at the resorts. The present OEC curriculum contains the knowledge and skills identified in the NHTSA curriculum for emergency medical care, plus additional information and training for patrollers. As we identified earlier, this program is the equivalent of a NHTSA emergency medical responder course. So the focus of the OEC program. So as an OEC technician, you must master anatomy and physiology, patient assessment process, documentation, and medical interventions. These are mastered through repeated practice, training and evaluation, intervention, and continued care for critical patients. The OEC program is developed and improved by NSP in conjunction with the National OEC Program Committee, the National Education Committee, and the National Medical Committee. To receive an OEC certificate of completion, OEC candidates must successfully complete the OEC course, which culminates with a nationally standardized assessment that consists of 2 parts, the written exam and the practical exam. As we identified earlier in the introduction, you know, currently we are not allowed to conduct in-person assessments. So as the pandemic winds down, we will have a plan to make sure that each and one of you can go ahead and sit and take the written exam and the practical exam. Now, one may also complete this course without having the ability to ski, snowboard, or ride a bike. As an OEC technician, you are required to demonstrate a level of skiing and toboggan handling proficiency for care and transport of an injured skier at a ski area, meet their special requirements, transportation, and perform other duties as required by the area. So just to recap those last few bullet points is that you do not have to be a skier or snowboarder or mountain biker to take this class. This class is open to everybody. And we are unique in our patrol in that we don't require all of our patrollers to ski. We do have various non-skiing positions. We call them auxiliary patrollers. And an auxiliary patroller to us is an individual that does not have the ability to ski. However, we can use them in other functions, such as down in our first aid room, down at our base area, or at our first aid room down below where our main first aid room is, to make sure that skiing patrollers are able to spend as much time out on the hill. Each year, National Ski Patrol develops a continuing education program for patrollers to remain current. This is developed by the National OEC Refresher Committee. This enables OEC technicians to refresh their knowledge and skills, and 1/3 of the OEC curriculum or content is covered each year. We refer to this as a refresher course, and it's primarily a hands-on course. So to sum up this slide, pretty much what this says is that for those of you that are EMTs or have ever been an EMT or anything in the medical field, many times you must maintain your credentialing through continuing education that you do on your own. National Ski Patrol is a little bit different. Every year we have a refresher that you must complete in order to maintain your credentialing. So you don't have to really do any medical education throughout the year. You are more than welcome to. What you are required to do is your 1 day a year refresher in order to keep up your OEC skills. We do host a refresher every year at our resort. However, if you are unable to meet our refresher, then you must find another refresher on your own. And many other areas do share their refreshers with other patrols. In fact, you will see our refresher is very popular with other patrols, and the reason why is we're Vegas. So what better way to go get your refresher done and go to Vegas at the same time? I mean, let's face it, nobody wants to go to a little tiny podunk resort in some podunk town, right? They all want to come to Vegas. So active NSP members must also complete a professional level CPR and AED course every other year and demonstrate skill proficiency in CPR annually, regardless of how long the CPR certificate is for. What we are planning for our patrollers that are joining the patrol this year is we are planning on having the CPR portion during your on the hill days. So in our syllabus, we have the CPR portion already developed and built out to where it's already part of our training program. And then every other year you must take that course, and every year you must show that you know how to do CPR. In addition, when you are a patroller, National Ski Patrol does require you to take and pass the ICS 100 Basics of ICS course given by the National Incident Management System, and you must only complete this course once. When you complete this course, there is no expiration date. It is good for eternity until you die, and you are required to take this course. And by the way, I would like to point out, if anybody has any questions about ICS, Rizzo is our go-to ICS FEMA guru. So if you do want to learn more about ICS or FEMA classes, please reach out to Rizzo, as he will be your individual who will have the most knowledge on that topic. So progressing through the material, going into ethical and legal issues. So throughout the history of the NSP, ski patrols have developed a good image with the skiing public, which is a significant protection for patrollers from legal implications. Just as patrollers must manage a patient's medical care, all must also know how to manage the legal aspects of rendering emergency care, which means that we must understand how to reduce legal risk arising out of an accident situation, which is important to our part of patrolling. As an OEC technician, you must hold yourself to a high ethical standards. Ethics is a science of morality or behavior that defines what is good or right. NSP patrollers and technicians have always maintained a high standard of ethical conduct with the public. And we hold, as a patrol, we hold these ethical standards to all of our patrols. Many times we are placed in positions where we are privy to personal information, including dates of birth, social security numbers, or other, information that is, personal to an individual, or we're also privy to their belongings, meaning that, we have access to their personal belongings like wallets, goggles, skis, that we want to make sure are returned back to our patrol, that are returned back to the individual that we are taking care of. So, when talking about ethics and ethical issues, we as a patrol always look to see what is right and how can we do the right thing. And if, as a patroller, we find you not doing the right thing, whether legally, morally, ethically, we will ask you to go ahead and resign from the patrol. NSP patrollers and OEC technicians have always maintained a high standard of ethical conduct with the public, and maintaining high ethics and the public's respect for OEC technicians is one of the duties and privileges of the job. The public has long viewed OEC technicians as good Samaritans, and these are people who help other people but expect nothing in return. However, I would like to argue that even though we are seen as good Samaritans, we may not necessarily be covered under the Good Samaritan laws. So Good Samaritan laws are designed to encourage volunteers to provide first aid care without the worry of being sued for negligence, which reflect the good work that voluntary rescuers provide to the public. So with Good Samaritan laws, it's still important for OEC technicians to make sure that ski area has adequate insurance protection, whether they work or they volunteer. Also note that they have adequate personal insurance. Good Samaritan laws are not legislated in all states, and area management can inform you of what impact the laws may have on you as an OEC technician in your state. And Good Samaritan laws do not protect you from gross negligence. Gross negligence is defined as unintentional failure to perform a manifest duty in reckless disregard of the consequences as affecting the life of property or another. Earlier, I mentioned that I would argue that we would not be covered under Good Samaritan laws as patrollers. So, one of the things for a Good Samaritan law to take effect is that you must not be compensated for the services that you provide. So we as volunteer patrollers with the Lee Canyon Ski Patrol, although we volunteer, we do receive some compensation in regards to our ability to patrol. That compensation comes in the form of the season pass, pro form discounts, half off in our cafeteria, and other benefits that come with being a patroller. Now, also too, with the Good Samaritan laws, you must not have a duty to act. And so this is where I would argue that we as patrollers are not covered under Good Samaritan laws because we have that duty to act. Meaning that if somebody gets hurt at the ski area, we have to respond to that incident. We cannot just put up what I call the paramedic salute, put our hand up, walk away, and act like we don't see the situation take place. So with that being said, and I can tell you from experience, the ski area does have, and they invest in the patrol and in the area when it comes to insurance protections. We've been involved in many cases that have been litigated, and every time the ski area has stepped up and to protect patrollers. Even when we have been named personally responsible in a lawsuit, the ski area has stepped up to defend our actions as long as we do what is right. Now, if we do gross negligence, meaning we do not do the right thing and we act in a reckless manner in taking care of a patient, rest assured the ski area will not have your back in that instance. So whether on or off duty, a uniformed OEC technician or other rescuer may have a legal obligation to render first aid care to an injured person in need of such care due to the doctrine of public reliance. The legal issue as to whether an OEC technician is required when not on duty is primarily governed by individual state or provincial laws, and understanding the relevant laws and codes concerning this legal point are important for an OEC technician's own legal protection. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, and any of our fellow patrollers or EMTs can jump in on this discussion, but I believe in the state of Nevada, unless your vehicle identifies you or you are easily identified as an individual that can render aid, you are not necessarily required to render aid. Even if you are trained in that area, if you are off duty and nothing shows that you are a patroller or there's nothing marked on your vehicle, you do not have to stop. For example, for my work, I drive a marked emergency vehicle with a big star of life on the back that says paramedic. And so if I do see something on the roadway, somebody injured, somebody down, car accident, I am legally obligated to stop and render aid. However, if I am in an unmarked vehicle that is not associated with my company, then I am not required to render aid. Now, what I'm getting at is that, it's really, depending on how you are marked, kind of up to you. If you are marked as a responder, you must provide aid. If you are not, you don't necessarily. However, that also doesn't take away from the moral duty to respond. Even though you might be in your own vehicle, off duty, not marked as a responder, you may feel that you have a moral duty to respond. And that is really up to you as to whether or not you are going to do so. The exception to this rule is when performing such care that may place you in a safety issue or put others at risk. So for example, if let's say that there is a car on fire or there is something that is placing you at risk, you are not required to respond. One of the things that we are really going to hammer into you over the course of this OEC class is making sure, correction, not OEC, Introduction to Ski Patrol. One of the things that we're going to hammer into you during this Introduction to Ski Patrol course is making sure that when you first come on scene, our scene is safe. We want to assess for any hazards, and so that's why this exception is here, is that if you are not in a safe scene, you are not required to act. So let's talk about a legal issue of abandonment. So an OEC technician who inappropriately terminates first aid care once care has begun could be liable under the legal doctrine of abandonment. So basically, if you start care, you cannot finish it. So examples include initiating care to an injured child and leaving child while you handle another accident, or leaving a patient who is awaiting an ambulance transport alone in the first aid room while the patient goes into shock. Exceptions are when providing such care could threaten a rescuer's own safety, or when competent patients have informed a rescuer they no longer want first aid care. Negligence can occur when an OEC technician harms an individual by not performing up to the standards of training. Failure to provide care with the standard of training that a reasonable and prudent OEC technician is expected to provide under the circumstances could be negligence. The patroller must meet the standard of training when performing first aid activities in order to avoid negligence. Once a duty to act is established, you are legally required to render appropriate care after you approach a patient. This failure to perform a promised act or obligation of due care is considered a breach of duty. So we talked about this earlier when we referenced the duty to act. As a patroller, if you are on duty wearing markings that identify you as a patroller, you are required to respond to an incident. You do not have that option. Now, let's say that you are off duty at the ski area and you are not marked in a red jacket and you are not marked as a patroller. You do not have a duty to act. So really, once again, if you are in a marked uniform or something that identifies you as a member of our patrol, you must respond if asked to do so. So negligence and breach of duty documentation. So it is important to document evidence of any contributory negligence by the patient involved in an accident. In this situation, the patient actually contributes to his or her own harm, and this might identify the legal concept of contributory negligence. In addressing either of these two legal principles, OEC should fully document the circumstances around the accident and any rendered care. I want to go ahead and take a moment and tell a story. We had an individual who got severely messed up at our area that had a very significant incident in which they underwent some major surgeries. And the course of the investigation found that this individual was skiing recklessly, which led to their injuries. Not to brag about myself, but one of the things that I have worked on as the patrol is making sure that we have very thorough documentation procedures. I came in late to the call, but I went ahead and saw that nobody was documenting the case and corralling witnesses. So I then went ahead and filled that role of talking to witnesses, interviewing witnesses, and getting witness statements that all corroborated this individual was skiing recklessly. Years later, this case went to court, and the attorneys on both sides actually thanked me for the thorough documentation that was provided at the scene of the incident. And so it's very important to make sure that we as patrollers are documenting cases. And if we suspect any kind of contributory negligence on behalf of our guest, we want to make sure that that is appropriately documented at the time of the incident versus later on. So the assumption of risk doctrine, this is a legal principle that protects patrollers. When skiers or snowboarders choose to participate, they assume that the sport has inherent risks. It is important to record the details of such accidents with great attention to how the accident was caused. If a skier or snowboarder does not follow proper procedures or follow directions properly, make sure this is documented on our accident form. The same principle also applies to accidents that involve equipment such as snowmobiles. Collisions with solid objects should also carefully be documented. And so pretty much this takes us back to our previous statement in that story that I spoke about, where we had a individual who was skiing recklessly. The investigation found that they were skiing recklessly. The witnesses corroborated that story, and their documentation ultimately led to the resort, from what I understand, winning that case because of the recklessness that the individual had while they were skiing at our area. So filling out a report as part of your OEC training, you will learn to document what occurred at the accident scene. This might be the only reliable source of information for constructing in court what happened. This is a vital part of your training and a critical part of the risk management of an accident scene. So the story earlier pretty much fits this right here. Because of the documentation that I was able to secure after the incident, we were able to recreate what happened and ultimately prove that we as a ski area were not at fault for the individual's injuries. So let's talk about the standard of training versus care. So OEC technicians are trained in several doctrines: the NSP Outdoor Emergency Care Curriculum, the local protocols for emergency care in their areas, and the requirements of state laws and regulations that govern first aid care. So let's break down this statement individually. So you are trained in several doctrines, the first one being the NSP Outdoor Emergency Care Curriculum. So what this means is that we are going to provide you a level of training that is going to be equivalent to that of other ski areas and of other areas that participate in the OEC program. This is a standardized curriculum that has a book that many of you should have purchased by now. And this is going to be the standard of care that we are going to reference in the event that there's a question on how to treat somebody. However, we also have another item available to us, and these are local protocols. So for example, our medical director, Dr. Patel, I believe, is our medical director. He's an ER physician over at UMC Hospital. He wrote local protocols that supersede our NSP care curriculum, meaning that if he wants us to do something special that the OEC curriculum does not provide or does not provide great clarity on, then we are able to have him write a protocol specific to our local area. However, that protocol must also be in line with the requirements and state laws and regulations that govern first aid care. NRS 450B governs EMTs and paramedics. And I'm not quite sure in the NRS, I need to look it up, if additional first aid care is covered under the Nevada revised statutes. The scope of training may be different for different members of a medical response team, and it is important for members of the medical response team to understand their roles and limitations that are placed on them pursuant to their level of training. Let me give you a perfect example of this last statement. I am a paramedic. I am a licensed paramedic. However, when I am at the ski area, I am not able to function as a paramedic. I am only able to function at the level of an outdoor emergency care provider. So the standard of training, you are trained in the NSP's Outdoor Emergency Care Curriculum. This is set forth by the OEC course using the text as a reference. Understanding the limits of the standard of training is important in reducing your legal risk as an OEC technician. In other words, everybody here is going through the same level of training, and we are going to hold you to that standard of training. The standard of care is a level of care an OEC technician must render based on OEC training, local medical protocols, and the requirements of a state's EMS system. Patrollers must be familiar with the local first aid protocols established by the ski area or land management area in which they serve. When you work as an outdoor emergency care technician at a ski area, you should be aware that you are patrolling as an agent of the ski area, not on behalf of the National Ski Patrol. What this means is that we function on behalf of Lee Canyon Ski Resort. We do not function on behalf of National Ski Patrol. Therefore, our area is able to supersede protocols to that of the OEC curriculum to define what we do at the Lee Canyon Ski Patrol. The NSP is not able to come into our patrol and tell us how to run things or what to do or how to function as a patrol. The NSP simply provides education training to OEC technicians in the classroom and on the slopes. The NSP does not control the patrol activities of patrollers while they are patrolling at their respective ski areas, and ski areas bear the legal responsibility for patrolling activities that fall within the duties of OEC technicians. So let's move on to talking about patient consent. Consent is a very important thing because we want to make sure that patients want us to be there and provide care. So before providing first aid care, outdoor emergency care technicians should obtain permission from the patient for that care, also known as consent. To give informed consent, the injured person must understand what actions the responder plans to take and agree to them. In other words, you come up on scene of a patient that has a broken leg. You assess your scene, you make sure your scene is safe, you then evaluate your patient. You identify that they have a possible fractured leg. So we say to the patient, all right, we've identified that you have a broken leg. We want to splint your leg. We want to go ahead, take you down by toboggan to the first aid room, and then we want to go ahead and call an ambulance to transfer. The thing is patients can go ahead and identify what areas they want to be treated. So in this example, the patient may consent to allowing us to split their leg, provide transport to the first aid room, but they may not agree to have an ambulance transport them to a hospital. Therefore, they are going to refuse care at the time of when an ambulance needs to be called. And let's say the patient wants their friend to take them to the hospital. Then that would be an individual who refused our care plan. However, they did accept care up to the point of ambulance transport. So informed consent basically tells the individual, what we plan to do, and the individual must agree to it. If the patient is competent and says yes to your care, then you have obtained express consent. And once again, you may have express consent up to a certain point. So you may have express consent up to splinting, transporting to first aid, but now you may have a refusal of care when an ambulance is called. The concept of express consent can become a complex at an accident scene. Care can involve express consent to assess and refusal of care to perform first aid and or transport, which we've already given you an example of when you might have express consent, or correction, we already gave you an example when you might have informed consent, express consent, and a refusal of care all in one call. Another type of consent that we as patrollers utilize is what we call implied consent. And this means the patient is not capable of providing express consent, but would request first aid care if he or she could. For example, if a skier is delusional or responsive, then we assume that they would want care in that circumstance. Many years ago, we had an individual that had a head injury, suffered an intracranial bleed, and this individual, kept saying, "Get away from me, get away from me." But this individual couldn't tell us their name. They couldn't tell us who they are. We recognized that they were that they had a possible head injury. We continued to treat the individual even though they said to get away. We went ahead and treated this individual under the doctrine of implied consent. We also have minor consent, and some states have determined that minors do not have the judgment necessary to provide express consent. If a parent or legal guardian is not available, implied consent typically allows the OEC technician to conduct first aid and provide transportation. A lot of times we work with group leaders or chaperones, which may have written consent to treat forms or obtain express consent after asserting their authority. And we quickly talked about refusal, but let's dive a little bit more into refusal. So refusal allows an injured skier, and I really don't like to use the term injured skier because what happens if it's a snowboarder, snowshoer, snow biker, snowmobiler, any other kind of individual. So, but basically refusal allows an injured guest, I should say, or injured patient, the opportunity to refuse first aid if they so do so. So in other words, we as patrollers have to offer to provide first aid assistance, and the individual has to refuse that care. Now, it is important to make sure that if the individual refuses care, that we document in writing that the individual refused the care. And the way that we do so is we have an against medical advice form that we fill out. When we talk about EMTs and paramedics and ambulances, the two biggest areas of liability when it comes to EMTs and paramedics, and this is very similar for ski patrollers, is one, responding to a call. One of our biggest areas of liabilities is driving lights and sirens. This doesn't really pertain to ski patrollers. However, I do mention it because the second part is important. The second biggest area of liability to EMTs, paramedics, ambulance companies, fire departments, etc., are refusal patients. Many times patients refuse care and then they try to spin it as though they were denied care. And I have been involved in numerous cases that have gone to court where a patient has refused care on scene and then tried to spin it with their attorney that they were denied care. So it is really important to make sure that if we have an individual refuse care, that we get a written refusal that clearly outlines the care that we have offered to provide and the fact that the individual is refusing the care that we wish to provide. Some additional legal concepts. So OEC technicians who continue to provide care after receiving a competent refusal of such first aid are placing themselves at a legal risk of being accused of assault and battery. So touching someone who does not desire to be touched is known as battery, and placing someone in a position in which they reasonably fear that battery will occur is known as assault. So for example, if I go up and I touch somebody, or if I hit somebody, or I touch somebody that does not want care, that can be seen as battery. Assault is the threat that you are going to do something to them. So if I threaten to hit you, I am assaulting you. If I actually hit you, that is defined as battery. So the use of physical force is rarely justified. If a individual, once again, I don't like to use the term skier just because there's so many individuals out there. So if an individual threatens you with the use of force, back away and call for more patrollers and area security staff. OEC technicians are trained to avoid scenarios in which they can be accused of assault or battery. So pretty much to sum this up, if you have a violent guest or you have something that is placing you in an unsafe situation due to the actions of another individual, please make sure to back away and call for assistance as quickly as possible. EMS system regulations. So each state has their own system for delivering emergency medical services. Different states prohibit the use of different types of medical procedures, and NSP has not designed the information of outdoor emergency care 6th edition for any particular state. It is important to understand the level of care to patients based on their state's particular laws or their rules, regulations, or EMS laws themselves. Like I said, NRS 450B, in case anybody really wants to go look it up, is the laws that govern EMTs and paramedics and pre-hospital care in the state of Nevada. So let's talk about patroller and EMS transition of care. Many times you will have a patient that will get hurt at the ski area and will require additional transport to a hospital, in which we will call for an ambulance. So the transition of care to a higher level medical provider begins with a concise report that includes what the patient problem is, what kind of care you have provided, and what are your concerns. The transition of care concludes with the patient being transported to more definitive care. So like we said, we have patients that come up to the ski area, they get hurt, and they must be transferred to an ambulance. Please keep in mind, our ambulance transport is coming from Las Vegas, so that can oftentimes be about 45 minutes or more away from the ski area. And so we want to make sure that if we do need an ambulance, we call it quickly. And when they arrive, we want to provide a verbal report with everything that we have done. Oftentimes, we'll also hand the transporting ambulance a written report that will contain vital signs, history, allergies, and medications. Give me 1 second here while I just take a quick swig of water. All right, so privacy laws. So as a ski patroller, you are going to be privy to some very private patient information. What this means is that patients are going to rely on you to keep their information private. And there are federal laws that are in place to protect patient privacy information. So the general trend of current laws is to keep medical information about injured persons private. The Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act was passed by Congress in 1996 to protect the privacy of an individual's medical information. And HIPAA likely does not apply to volunteer patrolling activities. Patrollers do not receive direct compensation for their medical services they render to injured patrollers. However, some paid patrollers might be subject to HIPAA requirements. All right, so this last statement that I made, so this text is taken directly from the OEC book. I do not agree with this last statement that HIPAA likely does not apply to volunteer patrolling activities. I see Patty shaking her head. I'm sure Rizzo is also agreeing with me on this statement. So, please, if anybody wants to chime in on this, please unmute yourself. But as a patroller, you are exposed to patient private information, and you are bound by HIPAA laws. We do view you as a healthcare professional, and as a healthcare professional, like I said, you are bound by HIPAA laws. I think what the text is going after when they say HIPAA likely does not apply to volunteer patrolling activities is, if you notice, HIPAA, the full name is the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. And what the act predominantly governs, about 90% of HIPAA, what it talks about is how insurance information can be shared between medical providers and insurance companies. And a very small section of HIPAA is actually related to patient privacy information. So that would be my assumption looking at this slide, is when it comes to patient billing, we do not bill patient information. Therefore, the statement that HIPAA does not apply to volunteer patrolling activities, because we do not bill for our services, we do not care about health insurance portability or sharing information with other health insurance companies. However, the provisions of patient privacy absolutely pertain to you as a patroller. I hope that sums that up. Are there any questions about HIPAA? All right, with not hearing anything, we'll go ahead and continue. So this exemption for many patrols does not eliminate the need to keep private the medical information obtained from an injured guest. And that pretty much sums up what I just said. All right, so we are towards the end of chapter 1. Let's go ahead and take a look at a case study. So a call comes in for a motor vehicle accident in the parking lot of a resort where a mountain bike race is occurring. One of the racers has just unloaded his bike. As he was riding to the starting area, a car hit him and left the scene. Upon your arrival, you find a 16-year-old boy lying on the ground holding his shoulder. He is tangled in his bicycle. Quite angry and yelling, he is also bleeding from his forehead, and a small crowd has gathered. So let's go ahead. We can have everybody go ahead and unmute yourselves if you want to participate in this conversation. What would you do?
Well, I would definitely ask for the person's name and ask them what had happened first.
Okay. So we see here that quite angrily that the individual is angry and yelling. Let me ask you this. I think kind of where the book is trying to point us into is the fact that he is yelling and he's angry. And what did we teach you guys? That, if you're ever in an unsafe situation, back away. But let me flip the question on you guys. If you were hit by a car, wouldn't you kind of be angry and yelling?
Yes.
Absolutely. So I think we have to look at the situation. So some things that we want to do is, first of all, make sure our scene is safe. We want to go ahead, make sure that, that the crowd is not an angry crowd, and, try to do crowd control. But we also want to go ahead and deliver care to the individual who is on the ground and appears to be in obvious discomfort. From there, yes?
First of all, you're going through all of that, but you'd introduce yourself. If you're a patroller, you would introduce yourself.
Oh, absolutely.
So that you can change the dynamics of the situation into, maybe he'll calm down, maybe he won't, but at least by talking to him, that you will figure out if he is altered or not altered by just that conversation. That's all.
Absolutely. Great point, Patty. So we've introduced ourselves, we've making sure the scene is safe. But also too, in this case, I mean, with a 16-year-old who has been hit by a car, we want to start considering additional resources. Are we going to need additional patrollers? Do we need risk management from the resort to assist with the investigative process in ensuring the, figuring out the liability of where the ski area lies? And then do we want to go ahead and call an ambulance? Also too, notice at the age of the individual is 16 years old. Do we need to go ahead and start considering, do we need to get mom and dad involved in this case? So you immediately assess the situation and make sure the scene is safe by instructing bystanders to stop any traffic. The injured teen is still yelling, so you calm him down. You stop the bleeding on his forehead. Following your initial assessment, having found no evidence of head or spinal injury, you call for help and EMS transport on the radio and ask for a responsible bystander to keep the crowd back. One bystander says he got the license plate number of the car, so you ask him to stay. Another OEC technician arrives and you instruct him to splint the boy's shoulder. Area management has also called the police. So what should you do next?
Render care, if you can.
What was that? You
render care. So
we go ahead and we render care. Like I said earlier, maybe consider mom and dad, and we have the ambulance coming and, continue to assist the area with their investigation on the case if it doesn't, take away from your care. Another OEC technician arrives and you instruct him to find the boy's parents. You care for the boy, rendering first aid until the ambulance arrives. Management arrives, as do the police, and you direct them to witness so that his statement may be obtained. The boy's parents are found in their condominium and come to the scene. You explain to them what happened while the mother accompanies her son to the hospital. You go back to the aid room and complete your paperwork. The next day, the mother calls the patrol room to tell you that her son dislocated his shoulder, had it reduced, and will be all right. Management informed today that the police found the driver who hit the boy. All right, so that brings us to the end of chapter 1. If you are still here, congratulations. I thank you for remaining here while we work through the first chapter. We have one more chapter to complete tonight, chapter 2, and that is the continuity and commonality of emergency care. However, it is right now 7:05. I say that we go ahead and take a 10-minute break. I will see everybody back in 10 minutes for chapter 2. All right, my apologies. I got wrapped up in a phone call during the break. But let's go ahead and get started on chapter 2. Just a quick sound check. Everybody can hear me. Can I get a thumbs up if everybody can hear me? Thumbs up. Yeah, perfect. Awesome. Good job. Hey, awesome. All right. So chapter 2 is going over emergency medical care systems. So as we identified in chapter 1, if we see the cross with a circle through it, that means chapter objective. And then we also have some key terms that are identified through a red term that is double underlined and bolded. 2.1 lists the several attributes, or actually going over our objectives. So 2.1 lists the several attributes of an emergency care system. 2.2 lists the 4 nationally recognized pre-hospital emergency care provider levels. 2.3, compare and contrast direct medical oversight and indirect medical oversight. 2.4, describe the purpose of quality improvement. We have a bunch of key terms which we're going to review during this chapter, so we're not going to break them down individually right now. So going over chapter 2. So each day, tens of thousands of people in the world are involved in an emergency medical situation. Often, these individuals require treatment before reaching a medical facility. Today, patient outcomes are significantly better thanks to the advent of modern emergency medical care systems. Today's coordinated response is part of an organized continuum of care that begins the moment the emergency care system is activated and continues long after the patient reaches the hospital. An emergency care system is a formal, organized network of specially trained personnel, equipment, and facilities that responds to medical emergencies regardless of cause, location, or the patient's ability to pay. In the United States, emergency care systems came from federal legislation enacted in the 1960s in response to a large number of highway fatalities. Later, these systems were expanded to decrease the number of out-of-hospital cardiac arrest and stroke-related deaths. All aspects of healthcare, including emergency medical care systems, are constantly changing to meet the needs of the communities they serve and to reflect the changes in medical knowledge, procedures, and technology. In many parts of the world, outdoor first care OFC providers and outdoor emergency care technicians interface with the local emergency system. So really quick, the OFC standard, National Ski Patrol has something called the Outdoor First Care. It's a basically first aid course. It's a little bit less time requirement than an OEC course. I believe the OFC course is a one-day course, but I could be mistaken. So OFCs and OECs provide emergency assistance and transportation services to patients located in outdoor non-urban settings, typically not served by traditional 911 providers. Think about it. If you had to call 911 every time somebody got hurt on the ski hill, they probably, 911 would not be able to meet the needs. As patrollers, we respond in a unique environment, and we are really essentially part of that 911 system in that we, take the patient down from the mountain where they are not accessible to an area where they can be accessed by traditional ambulances and firefighters. Having a basic understanding of what makes an emergency care system effective will help OEC technicians operate more effectively and better serve their patients. So the history of emergency care, the EMS agenda for 2050. In January 2019, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, aka NHTSA, enacted a new agenda. NHTSA is the federal agency tasked with overseeing the development of emergency care systems in the United States. The goal is to develop a more cohesive and consistent EMS system across the country. To retain our place in the EMS system, NSP needs to determine how our role will develop moving forward. The EMS agendas, the EMS Agenda 2050 guiding principles are: one, inherently safe and effective. So the entire system from start to finish is designed to minimize exposure to injury, infections, illness, or stress. Integrated and seamless, where EMS is fully integrated with all other aspects of healthcare and is engaged with the emergency services and within the communities in which they operate. Reliable and prepared, ensuring that EMS care is delivered consistently and compassionately and is guided by sound research at all times by all EMS providers at all levels or from all agencies. 4, socially equitable, so that access to care and the quality of care are not determined by the patient's age, socioeconomic status, gender, ethnicity, or where they live. Sustainable and efficient, meaning systems must be fiscally responsible, providing value to the community with a minimum of waste and a maximum of accountability. And adaptable and innovative, evolving to meet the chasing needs of the people whom they serve by continuously evaluating new tools and techniques, education programs, and system designs. So different levels of emergency personnel. So in the United States, emergency care systems utilize specially trained pre-hospital providers to deliver emergency medical care. We have 4 recognized levels. We have the emergency first responder or emergency medical responder. We have an emergency medical technician, advanced emergency medical technician, and a paramedic. So we're going to break down each individual role of pre-hospital providers here in the U.S. So starting with emergency medical responders, these are the first responders of an emergency medical system, often the first formally trained healthcare provider to reach a patient. The OEC training and qualifications meet or exceed the training requirements that of NHTSA. In fact, I would almost argue that our requirements of an OEC technician are far superior to that of an EMR or emergency medical responder. EMRs are trained to provide immediate life-saving treatment, stabilize critically ill or injured patients, wait for additional emergency response, assist higher level EMS providers, both at the scene and during transport. And some examples of EMRs would include police officers, firefighters, lifeguards, or ski and bike patrollers. My personal experience here in Nevada has been that EMRs are not widely used. In fact, the Southern Nevada Health District, who governs EMTs and paramedics here locally in Clark County, they do not recognize the EMR status. However, elsewhere in the state of Nevada, in some of the rural areas, EMRs are widely used. So basically, we don't find EMRs as heavily used in an urban setting. They tend to be used more in a rural setting. And then we have the emergency medical technician, and this is an individual who has completed a NHTSA approved EMT standard training course or its equivalent. EMT courses must meet the minimum standard or the minimum national training standards. And these consist of a minimum number of hours of didactic and practical instruction, as well as clinical experience in an acute care setting. Examples of EMTs can be found in an emergency room, on an ambulance, or in an intensive care unit. EMTs function with medical oversight to provide basic life support interventions, such as assessing a clinical status, splinting fractures, administering certain medications, using an automated external defibrillator, performing CPR, transporting patients to a medical facility. An advanced emergency medical technician is a person who has completed a NHTSA approved standard course for AEMT training and includes a didactical and practical instruction, clinical internships in one or more acute care settings. AEMTs function under medical oversight, and they may perform skills performed by EMTs, as well as other intermediate therapeutic interventions using basic advanced equipment and medications typically found on an ambulance. The equipment may vary by county, state, or province. Now, advanced EMTs, we do use them here in the system within Clark County and the rest of Nevada. Some areas do not recognize advanced EMTs. So, for example, California is an area that does not recognize advanced EMT. Here in Nevada, like I said, we utilize them. The differences between an advanced EMT and an EMT, EMT training here in Nevada is about 150 to 170 hours. Advanced EMT is about 170 to about 220 hours. So they go through additional training, and that additional training specifically includes administering certain medications, starting an IV, and doing advanced airway maneuvers with the use of a supraglottic airway. And then we have the paramedic. So a paramedic is an allied healthcare professional who has successfully completed a NHTSA approved course, which includes extensive didactic, practical, and clinical requirements. They operate under the medical oversight of a physician and provide higher level of pre-hospital care than EMTs using a variety of basic and advanced medications and equipment, including narcotics. Paramedics, during our year of training, we complete roughly 1,800 hours of training. So by the time that you have a paramedic that goes through paramedic school, they have received around 1,800 hours of pre-hospital training. Many times people ask me, what is the difference between an EMT and a paramedic? And I like to joke around that the difference between an EMT and a paramedic are the rule of eights. So a paramedic can intubate, meaning we can put a tube down somebody's throat. We can medicate, meaning that we have a bunch of medications, including narcotic pain medications. And we can defibrillate, meaning that we do manual defibrillation in case your heart is acting weird. We can slow down your heart, or we can speed it up using electrical therapies. Many systems use a tiered emergency system to deploy personnel and resources to emergencies and basically it's a tiered approach. So with a tier 1, the EMRs arrive on scene, assess the patient, and figure out what's going on. So essentially, us as ski patrollers are the first tier of an incident. We get on scene, we identify what's going on, and we call for additional resources. Shortly after EMRs arrive, then our second tier is where the EMTs arrive to provide BLS measures. And then if the situation warrants, EMTs may await for an advanced life support ambulance, or they may transport the patient to more definitive care. Tier 3 is where AEMTs and paramedics arrive after our EMRs and EMTs, and they provide the additional ALS measures to transport a patient. And then Tier 4 is where we have critical care providers, such as critical care paramedics, nurses, physicians, to bring to the scene with additional ALS stuff within their scope of practice. Many times, Tier 4 or critical care level providers are brought to a scene via helicopter, fixed-wing aircraft, critical care ambulance, or other means. So continuity and commonality of emergency care. So continuity of care is the seamless delivery of high-quality emergency medical care that occurs from a patient's initial contact with an EMR through definitive treatment. And when we reference definitive treatment, we are mentioning, or we are meaning care at a hospital, and a hospital that is capable of providing that definitive treatment. Just because somebody goes to a hospital does not mean that they're going to provide the care that they need. For example, we deal with a lot of trauma at our resort. And so those patients would not benefit by going to a local ER. Those patients need to go to a designated trauma center. Ideally, the moment a patient is initially contacted by ski patrollers to discharge from a hospital, the patient receives continuous care from trained medical professionals. At each transition, the level of medical care provided to the patient increases. If there's a break in the continuing care at any time, if the care provided does not follow local practices, the outcome might not be favorable. The team approach is one of the hallmarks of an effective emergency care system. So there are some individuals that are part of our emergency care system, and many times we do not think that they play an important role, but they absolutely do play an important role in providing high quality medical care. Two of the individuals, one are a emergency medical dispatcher, and this is the person who notifies patrollers or other emergency medical providers of a possible medical condition or injury that may occur. And then secondly is our medical director, who provides the oversight to EMS providers. Earlier I mentioned Dr. Patel is our current medical director for the ski patrol. And so he provides the medical oversight. So if you have any medical questions as to how to treat an individual, Dr. Patel would be the individual that we would go talk to. Commonality enables rescuers with an emergency care system to focus on the same priorities, speak the same language, perform rescue-related activities in similar fashion, regardless of the training level or clinical setting. This approach to teamwork enables rescuers to work together more effectively and to provide the best outcome possible for patients. Communication systems are the vital links that connect all the components of the emergency care system. A typical EMS communication system consists of hardware such as telephones, cell phones, radio equipment, computers, software, and specialized professionals who manage these resources. Effective communications improve patient outcomes and are essential for successful rescue operations. OEC technicians communicate with each other and other team members by two-way radios, landlines, and cell phones. Really quick, just talking about two-way radios, the ski patrol does provide two-way radios for us to use. However, if you do want, you can be a individual like me. I provide my own two-way radio. And if anybody has any questions about two-way radio communication, please get with myself or Bob Levy, as we both help the patrol in best practices when it comes to two-way radio communication. And then really quick, cell phones. For those of you who have not been to our ski resort yet, cell phones do not work. So really we are limited to landline and two-way radio communications when at Lee Canyon. Medical oversight in an emergency care system. A licensed physician assumes the legal responsibility for a patient's care throughout an emergency. This medical oversight ensures a continuity of care and that the patient receives proper treatment in accordance with local care guidelines. There are two types of medical oversight. One is direct oversight and the other is indirect oversight. Both types of medical oversight use pre-established medical orders known as protocols, which have been approved by the local medical authority. So direct oversight, we also refer to this as online medical control, and this involves real-time voice contact with a licensed physician who helps guide decisions concerning patient care. This is typically done via telephone or radio, and also includes the presence of a physician at the scene. This is used primarily to oversee the provision of advanced care procedures or medications and serves as a means by which pre-hospital providers may consult with the physician to discuss complex cases to obtain specific clinical, technical, or procedural information. Now, I can tell you as a patroller that's been on the patrol for, gosh, how many years? Since 2005, you do the math. I have not been in a situation where I have needed to call medical control. Any patrollers on the patrol, have you guys ever had to call medical control or call a physician to ask what to do while ski patrolling? I don't think so. I'm seeing some heads shaking no. Yeah. Typically, when we are on the patrol, we operate under indirect or offline medical control. We'll talk about that shortly. As a paramedic, We oftentimes operate under this direct oversight, where if we do have questions, we are patched in via a radio system. But because we do not have the direct radios through the ski patrol, and care is usually done in a remote area where we don't have access to phones, we oftentimes treat people based on standing order and protocols in order to provide the best care possible. So indirect oversight, or also called offline medical control, these are standing orders developed by the local medical authority. And so our medical director does write protocols that we follow as lead Canadian ski patrollers. Pre-hospital providers are not required to directly contact a physician before initiating specific treatments. This form of medical oversight is designed to expedite patient care. If you can imagine being on scene of a call and having to call a physician every time for every little thing, we would never treat guests or patients at the ski resort. So protocols are commonly used for pre-authorizing both routine procedures such as oxygen administration or advanced life-saving procedures or medications. I can go ahead and send out to the group, or I can have Patty send out to the group our current Lee Cane and Ski Patrol protocols, so you guys can see what we do as patrollers. And Patty, if you want, I don't know what your thoughts are, but maybe sending out the Clark County protocols, giving the patrollers or the candidates an idea of what EMTs and paramedics do here in our local EMS system. Patty, I can see your lips moving, but I can't hear you speak.
I will do that. That will be very helpful.
Awesome, thank you. So protocols, we've mentioned them. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what protocols are. So these are written instructions describing what should be done in a given situation. They serve as guidelines that identify the assessment and treatment considerations for commonly encountered not just medical emergencies, but traumatic emergencies as well. These are developed on a local level by emergency care professionals who are familiar with the area's needs, available resources, system capabilities, and local standard of care. In the case of ski bike patrols, protocols can be developed by the local protocols medical director in concert with management and may include practices and procedures that are not included in the OEC text. A common example of this, and I'm not sure, Patty, maybe you could provide some insight, or Rizzo, or even Diane. In the 5th edition of the OEC curriculum, it did not cover doing glucometer for diabetic patients. Has this been rolled out in the new OEC 6th edition?
Yes.
Okay, so so in the 5th edition, like I said, glucometers were not a standard of practice, but we as a patrol felt that it was in the patient's interest to do blood sugar testing using a glucometer. So we had our medical director write a protocol that then allowed us as patrollers to test individuals' blood sugars if we thought they were suffering from a diabetic emergency. So protocols should be reviewed annually and revised as needed. Quality improvement in emergency care systems, providing the best patient care possible, is a common goal among emergency care personnel. The goal is best achieved through a quality improvement program. Quality improvement, often abbreviated QI, is an ongoing process designed to ensure that the products and services provided meet or exceed customer expectations. It may involve careful examination of each step in the case, from initial entry into the emergency care system through definitive care. Changes, if needed, will ensure the future of patient will ensure the future care of a patient receives is delivered in accordance with local protocols and guidelines. As we discussed earlier, we're moving towards this evidence-based medicine, and with evidence-based medicine, we are guiding our protocols and what we are doing as patrollers by looking to see what works and getting rid of what doesn't work. So we're going to wrap up chapter 2 with a case study. So you find a woman laying in the snow after a skiing accident. She says she cannot move her legs. After making sure the scene is safe, you rapidly assess her, finding no movement or feeling below the waist. You call dispatch and tell them what you have found. What is the first thing you and dispatch should do? Anybody want to chime in on what you would do?
I would call an ambulance in that case.
Okay, so we want to go ahead and get an ambulance coming.
Yeah.
Anything else that we would want to go ahead and do?
You want to secure the scene, make sure it's out of any hazards.
Absolutely. So make sure the scene is safe, make sure we don't become a victim. How about identifying additional resources, not just the ambulance that we want, but how about calling for additional patrollers, maybe calling for a toboggan, calling for a backboard, calling for our trauma pack, which contains our oxygen.
I'm bringing up the ambulance because it's taking 45 minutes to come from Las Vegas, and you'll need that.
Absolutely. And you know, the thing is that if we call the ambulance quickly, by the time we have the patient extricated, many times we can pass off directly to an ambulance.
That's exactly
whereas if we do the extrication from the scene and then we get to the first aid room and now we have to call for an ambulance, well, we're behind the 8 ball.
Yeah.
So by making that call early, as you identified, we can make sure that we have as little time spent with that patient as possible.
Robert, so if you call an ambulance, obviously you're just going to describe to the patient what you want to do and the way forward. So if you refuse again, you don't call the ambulance, yes? Absolutely.
And you know what? Many times I've been in the situation where we've had a patient who is sick or injured and they refuse an ambulance. And so what ends up happening is they refuse the ambulance transportation. And so what ends up happening is that we keep the ambulance coming to us until we know that the individual is off our ski area. And the reason being is that, it doesn't hurt to call, right? We can always call the ambulance and we can always turn it away. So, if you think you're going to need an ambulance, make that call early. But patients can also change. So, for example, we've had many times, and I'm sure every patroller has probably seen this case, where you come on scene and, you say, "Hi, my name is Sam. I'm a ski patroller. I see you're injured. I would like to take care of you." The person goes, "I don't want you to take care of me," but we recognize the patient is sick. We start the ambulance anyways. We continue to talk to the patient. We get their trust. We say, "Hey, look, I think you really want to look at this. Taking an ambulance, being treated, the paramedics have pain medication. They can ensure that you have a safe ride down the mountain." And then, ultimately they agree to transport, or they progress to where they are now unresponsive to now where we really want that ambulance coming.
But realistically, if you cannot move your legs, you'll probably accept the ambulance, I guess. Most of the time.
Absolutely. Because I guess the other question is, how are you getting down, from the ski resort if you can't move your legs?
Yeah. So that's the.
I'd imagine too. A lot of times they won't understand the full gravity of the situation, like you may understand, seeing it from a third-person point of view. And I'd imagine that plays a big factor as well in keeping that coming to the ski area. Because that the decision may change once they fully understand what's going on.
Oh, absolutely. And I've had that conversation with many patients where, like, "Oh, I don't think it's that bad," or, "Oh, I don't think it's that significant." And, what I tell people is, look, I'm not in the business of selling people ambulance rides. I want to keep you out of ambulance as much as I can. But, if, based on my, 15 years as a patroller and paramedic, I have no problem telling somebody, I think you need an ambulance.
Absolutely.
All right, so moving on to the rest of the case study. So the dispatcher activates the emergency care system by calling 911. He explains that the patient has no movement or feeling below the waist and requests ALS and air transport since there is a probable spinal cord injury. You get additional information for the patient and keep the woman calm and warm while awaiting assistance. You're careful not to move her. Once patrollers arrive, they assist you with placing her onto a long spine board. The patient is transported to an awaiting ambulance crew who transport the patient to a helicopter zone and then a definitive care facility. So we've transported we've transferred care to a patient or to the ambulance and ultimately the air ambulance. But let me ask you this: what is your responsibility after you have transferred that care?
The paperwork.
Yeah, absolutely. Paperwork, right? So, we want to, do the incident report. You know, we may want to go ahead and notify risk management of the ski resort. We may also want to go ahead and maybe consider additional witnesses. Did anybody see this individual get hurt that we need to get a witness statement from? All right, so the patient survives a spinal cord injury. Your risk manager and medical director discussed the case for educational purposes with the patroller involved. Care given was exceptional. After much therapy, the patient learns to walk again. She returns a year later, thanking you for getting her to definitive care. All right. So are there any questions about the material that we covered tonight? Nope. Okay. Really quick, I just want to take a look at the syllabus and see where we are for next week. Everybody should have or be working on getting their book for the OEC class. So please make sure to review the material. Tonight we went over chapters 1 and 2 and also provided an intro to the OEC class. And next week we're going to go over chapters 3 and chapter 6 of the curriculum. And I just noticed, and Patty, hey, FYI, I just realized there is no chapter 4 in the syllabus. So I may have to do a syllabus rewrite. So for next week, is it at the end? Oh, you know what? It is. I lied. Okay, disregard. Chapter 4 is at the end of the program. Thank you, whoever commented with chapter 4. So on Wednesday, please make sure that you review chapters 3 and 6, and then we will go ahead and discuss those chapters as a group. Are there any questions I can answer to anybody on the call?
Okay, so
how did the
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh,
go ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Are there quizzes that we need to take?
I think I put in the syllabus that there were some chapter quizzes. You know what? I did not get those out in time. I will get working on some chapter quizzes for you guys to review the material. Next question.
That was my question as well.
Yeah, there will be a final exam from NSP that we will give everybody. But yeah, I wrote that we had quizzes in the syllabus, and yeah, totally forgot to put them out. So I will work on getting that out to you guys.
Oh,
We can just go over the questions in the book.
Yeah, you can do that too.
So we went over this is Patricia. We went over pages on chapter 1 through 2 from page 1 all the way to 39. I would suggest in reviewing, if you have any questions or concerns, write them down so we can address them. There are some things that we can address as far as documentation and the HIPAA law that I think that we should address more, but we could do that at a later date because you are going to run into, the hill has a bar. People do drink. Just remember that you're going to have skiers, snowboarders that have a tendency to drink too much. They get a little rowdy, and before you know it, a little fight will occur. So when that does happen, be very careful. Alert the rest of the patrol, alert management, back off. Try not to de-escalate. If you can, fine. But if you can't, don't worry about it. Let management help you because management will stand behind you. That is, so don't put your hands on them. Don't push them or anything because we've had incidents. Also in documentation, remember, if you did it, you document it. If you didn't do it, you don't document it. Don't put it there just to make yourself look good. If you didn't take a blood pressure, if you didn't do this, if you didn't see this, don't document it, okay? And kids, remember there are parents, there is a guardian there, so try to get a hold of them, send another patroller for it. Management will help you. We're all a team and we all work together. If you're not sure, get a hold of someone. That's it. And I really thank everyone for attending this. And if you have questions or anything like that, we're here to help you. And thank you, Sam.
No problem. I would ask really quick before we disconnect, I would like to have a quick powwow with the patrollers. So if you are a candidate and you don't have any questions or concerns, I'm going to ask you to go ahead and disconnect from the phone call. I would just like to have a quick summary call with all of our current patrollers on the phone. Patty, the Sajatis, Rizzo, Levy, and anybody else who's an active patroller.
I have a quick question. If we
Yeah.
can make a class, should we reach out to you and let you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Let us know. We are planning on recording the videos and uploading them to YouTube. At least that is the current plan. We'll see if the technology capability allows for that. I don't see why we shouldn't be able to. And we'll be able to get those videos out to you every week.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Cool. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Thank you. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks,
Have
guys.
a good one. See you Wednesday.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.